Welcome to our Tuesday, March 22nd, 2022, regular closed session meeting of the East Bay MUD Board of Directors. Roll call, please, Madam Secretary.
Director Coleman.
Present.
Director Katz.
Present.
Director McIntosh. Here. Director Mellon.
Present.
Director Patterson. Present. Director Young.
I'm here.
President Lenny.
I'm here. And if members, so we're now on to the public comment. If members of the public are online and wish to make public comment, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom. When prompted, please state your name, affiliation if applicable, and topic. Please refrain from providing personal information such as addresses or phone numbers during public comment. If we need this information, we'll have you contact staff. The secretary will call each speaker in the order received. Each speaker is allocated 3 minutes to speak. However, I have the discretion to amend this time based on the number of speakers. The secretary will track time and inform each speaker when the allotted time is concluded. Risha, do we have any speakers?
I don't see any hands at the moment for public comment. And we have one. Yvette Rivera, you should be able to unmute your mic. And your 3 minutes will start now.
Thank you, Risha. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I'm here to acknowledge the one-year anniversary of the two brave women of color, Ariel Bland and Saji Pierce, that sacrificed their careers at East Bay MUD when they disclosed their experience as East Bay MUD attorneys through their federal civil rights lawsuit against Craig Spencer, Laura Costa, and East Bay MUD. A few weeks ago, East Bay MUD had a Black man with 32 years of experience talk to the directors during a board meeting about his experience of discrimination at East Bay MUD. Today, I'm going to honor Ariel Bland. I'm going to give her center stage because in 2 days, it'll mark the 1 year anniversary of her submitting her tort complaint against East Bay MUD. A tort complaint is something that you have to submit before you file a lawsuit against East Bay MUD in court. I'm going to read from her unlawful discrimination section, just a couple of paragraphs, and then I'll end. Unlawful discrimination. The district's discriminatory conduct began when the district general counsel, Craig Spencer, refused to hire a claimant who was the best qualified candidate for an attorney position. Claimant applied for the position in March 2018. The announcement, application materials, and interview questions all emphasized the position required litigation and public sector experience, which she was well qualified for. At the time of her application, claimant had worked for 4 years as in-house counsel for 2 public agencies, the County of San Diego and the County of Marin, and clerked for a United States District Court judge. Claimant had experience in transactional work as well as litigation experience as deputy county counsel. Prior to the interviews for the position, Mr. Spencer made it clear he wanted someone with litigation background and public sector experience who could hit the ground running. At that time, the district legal department had not hired a minority attorney in more than 16 years or an African American attorney in more than 22 years. Mr. Spencer was the general counsel with complete authority over the hiring process during all of that time. The interviews for the attorney position took place on July 13th and 16th, 2018. The interview panel included 5 in-house attorneys who were familiar with the minimum qualifications for the position and Mr. Spencer's stated expectations. The panel unanimously ranked claimant as the #1 candidate. Mr. Spencer ignored the panel's recommendation and selected Anna Gunderson, a white female, over claimant. Unlike claimant, the white female attorney had no prior litigation and public agency experience. She also had 2 years less legal experience as an attorney than claimant. End quote. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Any other speakers?
Let me double check. We have no other speakers for public comment.
All right. We will close public comment then, and we will convene to discuss closed session items. We are scheduled to return to our regular board meeting at 1:15. Thank you, everyone. Welcome to our Tuesday, March 22nd, 2022 regular business meeting of the East Bay Mud Board of Directors. Reports from this morning's Finance and Administration Committee meeting, and also the Long-Term Water Supply Workshop number 2, as well as the March 9th Los Vaqueros JPA and March 10th FRWA Water meetings will be provided under item 11. Roll call, please, Madam Secretary.
Director Coleman.
Present.
Director Katz.
Present.
Director McIntosh. Director Mellon.
Present.
Director Patterson. Director Young. President Lenny.
Here, all present. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
No, it's too short for Craig.
The district was awarded the National Association of Clean Water Agencies National Environmental Achievement Award in public service and in support of wastewater-based epidemiology. General Manager Clifford Chan will provide some highlights of the award.
Thank you, President Linney. So the National Association of Clean Water Agencies awarded the National Environmental Achievement Award in the public service category to the district in recognition of its early, multi-pronged, and sustained efforts to support the use of wastewater-based epidemiology in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The district began sampling wastewater for COVID-19 in March 2020, and the sampling has continued since then. Early in the pandemic, the risks of this sampling were not well understood, but our staff took appropriate protective measures and proceeded on this important activity to combat the virus. These early samples contributed to important method development work at leading universities, including Stanford University, the University of California at Berkeley, and the University of South Carolina. Continued sampling has informed the Alameda County, Contra Costa County, and state public health decision makers. In addition, our own staff developed in-house methods for quantifying the virus in our laboratory. The district supported various funding efforts and garnered national attention for the use of wastewater as a tool to combat the pandemic. The district was featured in numerous publications, news articles, on local radio reports, and as an expert on a nationally televised show. The district is proud to be part of these global efforts and to be recognized by this prestigious national award. I would like to thank and congratulate the following wastewater department team members for their contributions. Alicia Chakrabarty, Manager of Wastewater Environmental Services. Gabriela Esparza, Wastewater Control Inspector 2. James Hake, Associate Civil Engineer. Paula Hansen, Senior Wastewater Control Inspector. Kylie Kinnan, Wastewater Control Inspector 2. Ki Lai, Senior Wastewater Control Inspector. Melissa Lash, Research Microbiologist. Irene Liu Wong, Laboratory Supervisor. Christine Pagtakan, Wastewater Control Inspector 2. Daniel Siu, Senior Wastewater Control Inspector. David Williams, Senior Wastewater Control Inspector. And Jonas Woldeab, Wastewater Control Inspector 2. Please join me in congratulating staff for a job well done.
Congratulations to everyone. This is a big achievement and a major contribution to public health in the United States and here. So thank you all very much, and I'll let you pass along around this beautiful teardrop.
Thank you again.
So I just want to add that when Eileen first told me about this program, it made me beam with pride for wastewater treatment staff and for the innovation for this. And it's great to be recognized by such a prestigious award for this work. So thank you for that.
Can I Quick question. Eileen, real quick. On the news last night, it talked about other wastewater treatment facilities in the Bay Area now detecting the new Omicron AB2, whatever it is. Are we detecting that?
No, right now, our results are looking really good. We're still submitting results 3 times a week, and so far, we're not seeing an uptick in our results. And it's something they're watching for. You've probably seen some of the wastewater plants on the East Coast. They're starting to see an uptick, but I can guarantee you we're sampling every other day. And this wonderful team, I've done the coordination, but this wonderful team is the one that's been taking the poop samples. So I'm really happy to recognize them. So the good news is so far we're so good, but the good news is this is, as you now know, it's a leading indicator. It's now part of the governor's endemic plan, and we were the leaders with the Princess cruise ship when we first had to take the waste from the Princess cruise ship. So that's how our journey began. But thank you to everybody who is taking samples every other day.
Yes, major kudos.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for asking that question. I had that in my mind as well. Okay, there are no announcements required from closed session, and we're on to public comment. If members of the public online wish to speak on agenda or non-agenda items, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom. Comments on non-agenda items will be heard now, and comments on agenda items will be heard with each of those items. When prompted, please state your name, affiliation if applicable, and topic. Please refrain from providing personal information such as addresses or phone numbers during public comment. If we need this information, we will contact you. The secretary will call each speaker in the order received. Each speaker is allotted 3 minutes to speak. However, I have the discretion to amend this time based on the number of speakers. The secretary will track time and inform each speaker when the allotted time has concluded. Madam Secretary, we have speakers.
I don't see any hands for public comment just yet. I have 1 speaker for public comment. Rep. Rivera, you should be able to unmute your mic.
Thank you, Risha.
And your 3 minutes start now.
Hi, board. I'm here to promote, I'm here to talk about 3 things. 1, to promote my personal YouTube page that's specifically set up to ensure public has access to more than the whitewashed Board of Director meeting minutes that sugarcoat reports of discrimination, retaliation, and misogyny at East Bay MUD. 2, to commemorate Saji Pierce and Ariel Bland's heroism and courage for standing up to retaliation and discrimination at East Bay MUD. I think tomorrow commemorates the 1-year anniversary where they filed the government tort complaint that was the mandatory precursor to filing the federal civil rights lawsuit in court, where they named Laura Costa, the former HR manager, Craig Spencer, the former general counsel, and East Bay MUD. And 3, I'm going to read just a paragraph from the 1983 EEOC determination for the Stanley P. McIntosh case. It's just a paragraph, but the reason why it's important that I read it now is because I can see similarities between what Mark Carradine brought up a few weeks ago, what Saji Pierce and Ariel Bland brought up in their federal civil rights lawsuit. And that's it. I'm going to go ahead, even though I just want to mention that my YouTube page or YouTube site is under I Rivera. Rivera. I'm building the library, and hopefully by East Bay MUD's 100-year anniversary next May, I'll have it up to the caliber of the Lincoln Project's website. So I'm signing off by just reading the 5th paragraph of the determination letter of Stanley P. McIntosh. And it says, therefore, the oral portion of testing had a disparate impact on Blacks and Asians in that a disproportionate number of minority applicants were ranked lower than Caucasians, thus denying them, as opposed to Caucasians, the opportunity for promotion. That's the only paragraph I wanted to read for now. I'll be at the district for at least another 5 years. I'll make sure to include the rest of it in the future. Thank you for your time.
All right, do we have any other speakers?
I have one speaker. It's call-in user 1. You should be able to unmute your mic. And your 3 minutes will start. Yes, your 3 minutes will start now.
This is caller 1. Is my microphone on?
Yes.
Good afternoon, EBMUD employees, posse members, legal department, weenies, board members, and Risha Cole. I'm Nick Lawrence, appearing remotely from the headwaters of the McKellamie River today, presenting today's episode 15 of a dangerous condition of public property in the form of the out-of-service fire hydrant on Tappan Terrace in Orinda, still existing. And I report here from the McKellamie River that there's not much water here, not much snow, and certainly even less water at fire hydrant 14100 on my street in Orinda. Carlton Chan's broken promise rings loudly in the face of all that pride that we just heard being dispensed a few minutes ago. The broken promise to restore the fire hydrant to its operating condition with an 8-inch pipe. The Tappan Terrace neighborhood and ratepayers and all are very disappointed. Posse members, keep those tips coming to EBMUD at NICKLAWRENCE.com. Back to you, Risha.
Thank you, Nick.
Okay.
Any other speakers?
I don't have any other hands for public comment.
All right, then, we will move on to our consent calendar. Items 1 through 8, are there items to be pulled from the consent calendar, anyone? All right, do I have a motion?
I'll move. John Coleman.
All right. All right, moved by Director Coleman, seconded by Director Patterson. All in favor, signify aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passes unanimously. We'll now move to determination and discussion, and I'll look for Clifford to lead us through that.
Great. So first, we have the guidance for issuing green bonds. I'll note that this item was discussed at the Finance Administration Committee meeting this morning, and the committee unanimously accepted staff's recommendation. We have Sam Feldman-Crow with a brief presentation to begin the discussion.
Mr. President and members of the board, General Manager Chan. So presentation's up on the screen. We're talking about the update to the guidance for issuing green bonds. And first, as we go to the next screen, next slide, please. Now that we're in person, I get to show you in person what our offering documents look like. The subcommittee got to hear this earlier. But this is what the offering document looks like. And up on the screen is the front page. And when we talk about green bonds, what we're talking about is that 2 words and the parentheses around them that labels these bonds green bonds. And the green arrow we added just to point out what it is. And you know those 2 words help us market the bonds and help our banks and underwriters that we work with sell the bonds to investors out in the world. And it even helps us market the bonds in Bloomberg terminals, that kind of thing. They had a little green leaf next to the bonds. And so how do you get there? How do you get green bonds? If we go to the next slide, we'll talk about it. So green bonds, this concept is it's been around about a decade now, somewhere around 2010, 2014, started to come up. And the idea behind green bonds is that they're bonds issued where the proceeds are used for environmentally beneficial projects. And so what does that mean? What does green mean? It's really up to the issuer, the entity issuing the debt. It includes both municipal issuers like ourselves or cities or counties, school districts. It also includes corporate issuers. Apple could issue a green bond as well. And it depends on whether, if a project qualifies for green bonds, really depends on the issuer and the standards they've chosen to adopt. Some issue or adopt their own standards like we have historically. Some use these other frameworks that are out in the world. But as of yet, there's no widely accepted definition of what a green bond is or what projects need to do. And it's up to issuers to decide. So there's no regulatory body, no rulemaking authority that has said this is the standard, this is what a green bond is. And so since 2015, the district has been issuing green bonds. We've issued them, I believe this would be the fourth time we've issued green bonds on the water system. In this coming issuance this year, we plan to label as green bonds. And then on the wastewater side, it will be the first time that we plan to issue bonds using the green bond label. We issue partly the reason we haven't so far is we issue smaller amounts of bonds and less frequently, typically on the wastewater side. And so in 2015, the first time we issued green bonds, the board adopted guidance for issuing green bonds, a sort of document that provided some criteria for what we would consider projects that are eligible for green bonds. At the time, that was based on the best available market knowledge and experience. There was an existing framework that still exists today and has been updated since then. And so we relied on that in part. So if we can go to the next slide. So since 2015, there have been many developments. One is that green bonds are not the only kind of special bonds out there. So there are now other kinds. ESG is often what this is called in the investing world. Environmental, social, and governance. So green bonds would fit under the E, and then there's others that fall under the S and the G. And on the green bond side in particular, there are several frameworks out there. So some of them we reference in this recommended guidance. You can see in the memo and attachment, including the UN Sustainable Development Goals, Climate Bond Taxonomy, and the Green Bond Principles. But again, none of them are adopted by regulatory or rulemaking agencies, and so these are all just voluntary frameworks. And then there's also other types of bonds that fall beyond the E part of ESG. So social bonds is a big one that is now the biggest source of ESG-related bonds, and that's mainly driven by affordable housing bonds, often issued by states. And there's other kinds. So we talked a little bit in the committee earlier today about sustainable bonds as a label. And sustainable bonds, I've talked to a couple people since then, and that is even an evolving term. So sustainable bonds typically means it has both a green or environmental purpose and a S or social purpose. So it typically a sustainable bond is doing both improving or making social improvements and also making green or environmental improvements. And so other developments in the market, just as reference, some information we found from 2021 of all the municipal bonds issued, 38 billion were green or social bonds in 2021. And that was about 8% of all municipal bonds. This is up from about 5% in 2020. So it continues to be a growing part of the market. And if we can go to the next slide. So we talked about our guidance for issuing green bonds. Since 2015, the other big development in this area is that there are now vendors who offer paid verification services for green bonds. For an issuer of our type and doing the kinds of projects we're doing and the size of the debt that we plan to issue, the costs are estimated at about $20,000 or more per series if we use one of these vendors. And just the quick typical process is we would select a vendor, and the vendor would use either criteria we give them, so it would still require us to develop our own criteria, or they may use their own criteria or some of these other frameworks I mentioned. They all kind of do a different thing. And then they would go through those projects, we'd provide them information about them, and then they would produce an opinion of some kind saying this meets the definition of a green bond. And so we reviewed that as one way to do it. The other alternative is what we've done, which is have our own policy, we review, and then we include a lot of information in our offering documents just like this. And we talked about this with our underwriting team and others in the market, and the consensus was that for an issuer like us, the best thing continues to be self-labeling bonds, while at the same time improving how much we're reporting and improving the guidance that we're using to issue the bonds. Additionally, self-labeling is the most common method still. About 60% or more of green bonds are self-labeled. And this is particularly true for water and wastewater utilities. If you're a city or a county issuing bonds that have a lot of general purposes, it may, you may want to really prove that those are green projects because some of them may be not traditionally seen as easily green. Meanwhile, a lot of the projects we do every day are just de facto green projects because we're all about cleaning water and reducing pollution. And then also, East Maine has a great reputation out there for being on the leading edge of other side of the environmental and sustainability and energy policy side of this and energy transition. So for all of those reasons, when we talked about our financing plan over the last year, we've continued to think self-labeling is our best option. And so next slide, the next part of that is we do think we should improve or make some recommendations to improve and modernize our guidance for issuing green bonds. That document first approved in 2015. And the changes include some new language from district policy. So at the time it was the sustainability policy. It's now called the sustainability and resilience policy. Things like that, relatively minor improvements to align with our existing policies. And then also we wanted to go a step further than we had in 2015, which was we have our set of criteria. You can see this in the attachment to the memo in your board packets. That last page shows the criteria we have for green bonds, and then it also maps that criteria to the frameworks that are out in the world, the UN Sustainable Development Goals, again, climate bond taxonomy, and the green bond principles, and says, well, this is roughly equivalent. Our category, that is, for example, reduce pollution, under the green bond principles, there's an item called pollution prevention and control. Well, those are pretty much overlap, so that's a pretty good way to map these two. We think this document, this guidance document that we're asking for your approval today, in addition to other improvements to our offering documents, I'll hold it up again because I brought it all the way downstairs, those will really help us continue to market our green bonds to investors, broadly speaking. And so with that, next slide, please. We're asking today for the board's approval of our guidance for issuing green bonds. I can take your questions.
Questions? Marguerite?
I was doing work for SEIU in the capital stewardship program when green bonds first emerged into the scene, and there was quite a lot of concern about not us, but greenwashing on the corporate side, and it still feels. I appreciate that there are some frameworks that have been established, but it's still the Wild West. It's still, you can do whatever you want, and I support what we're proposing here, and it certainly makes sense for us to, be green, we are green, et cetera. I'm wondering, and this might be a question for Marlene or other people, is like what, or maybe Sophia, in our engagement with Ceres or others that we interact with in terms of engaging in efforts to create a regulatory framework for green bonds and the whole ESG, social impact bonds, what have you, because it'll position us better. I mean, bottom line is like, we don't have anything to worry about, but a number, especially as we move forward in the climate transition, there are and there will be many who see opportunity in claiming to be part of the green future and financing the green future, who really are kind of just out to improve their bottom line with maybe questionable standards. So do we have any plans to move on that front, or are there things that we have done to advocate for that?
That's a great question. On the debt side, I'll see if others want to comment. On the debt side, we watch this market pretty closely because we always plan to issue green bonds when we can. And on the corporate side, I think the SEC is interested in this topic and seeing what they can do. Certainly the change in administration probably, and as there's new officials coming in at those top jobs, I think they're thinking about how to do this. For example, I think there's just a news story that the SEC is going to start requiring corporate participants,
Yeah,
regulators.
there's a whole climate disclosure
Yeah.
process going on.
So I imagine there will be, especially on the corporate side. You know, the muni side, the industry has been a little careful because, we are not directly involved, but there's been some concern about where the regulation comes from or who does it. For example, as I mentioned, the verifications cost money, and that is money that it'd be $40,000 over the course of this year. If there was if the regulation was proposed for munis that you have to pay, in order to use green bonds, you have to pay someone, I think we'd feel pretty uncomfortable. We'd rather not have to do that if we can avoid it. Because now you're just adding more every time we issue debt. So I think it's a thing we watch. But so far, no one has really found, I think corporate is a much bigger world for this in terms of.
Sure,
maybe
no, but I think
yeah.
we need to be engaged in the corporate.
Yeah.
I mean, the verification services, it just sounds like pay to play. That isn't, I mean, if you can give them your guidelines and say, here, please verify that what we're saying is what we're saying, I mean, that's crazy. I mean, that's why a regulatory framework that you're, as most government agencies are, you don't pay somebody else. I mean, you might do an audit every once in a while, and that makes sense, but I wouldn't be as concerned about that as I am about, engage, as an investor, maybe it's the EBMUD retirement system side, investor engagement side that really makes there's a lot of alignment for us to be interested in making sure that the green bond space, whether it's corporate or municipal, is one that we can be proud of being a part of. So that's sort of my interest there.
Yeah,
It's something we can follow up. Oh, I'm sorry.
no, sorry. I was just saying that, I mean, certainly hear your concerns, and let us research this and report back on your concerns.
Andy, you have?
Yeah, I support the aspirations that Director Young is expressing, and some of the comments that I made in this morning's committee meeting have to do with the ease of being able to self-certify a green bond. Under our guidelines, it's as simple as meeting one of the many criteria, and there's no restrictions if there's negative impacts on any other criteria. So it's a fairly open-ended criteria, and I think that it does merit being careful because there's a lot of there's a wide range of potential projects that probably should qualify for green bonds, and we only have a narrow perspective of the types that we issue. So as the market evolves, I think we need to be aware of multiple stakeholders, but also the significance and integrity of the green bond label. So I encourage our active participation in those conversations. And even here, I think the criteria that we're most likely relying on is the improvement of water use efficiency, including conservation through reduced water loss. And I think that it raises questions of how significant that benefit is. I think the nature of the project is significant and deserves support as a green bond because of its importance to some of the international criteria like sustainable water and wastewater management. But it does, the criteria that we're applying to ourselves, if there was another project that didn't involve sustainable water and wastewater management and had I think it raises some questions of measurability and significance that I think might depend on the benefit in the private market. If there was a big market difference in how much the bond is marketed for and what kind of beneficial rate it gets, and whether you're taking away a portion of market share from others that have superior environmental benefits, then this conversation means something different.
Yeah.
So I think it's early to start to draw those distinctions, but we need to be thinking about these questions. So I can be patient as long as we're keeping the board aware and having these open conversations. Thank you.
Yeah, Director Kett, just to add, we often, in the world, they call that the greenium, sort of like a premium for green bonds, greenium. And in the tax exempt world, in California bonds, it's not there yet. So issuing green bonds versus not issuing green bonds, there's not a lot of evidence that it gets us a better price. And so that's part of what goes into the concern about, do we pay an outside vendor? Well, we're not lowering our interest costs yet. But I would, there are issuers out there who have done special things or issued taxable bonds or tax exempt or something where you do see a basis point here or there. So I think as that, you made a great point, as that continues to develop, we want to make sure we're taking up the market share we deserve to take up of the green world. So we're not doing what Director Young said, which is, this greenwashing or trying to oversell our green benefits. So, anyway. We love talking about it, so we're happy to come back,
Yeah, I think you maybe just answered the question that I've had in my mind, which is, what's the benefits of doing this?
I think twofold. One is, if there is a greenium, we want it. We want to get the lowest cost for our ratepayers at every chance we have, and this is something that, to me, this is about, this is not meant derogatorily, it's about marketing what we do best. We're one of the best agencies probably in the country in terms of environmental sustainability. The projects we're doing, the things you all, as a board, have directed the staff to care about. So the more we can do to do that is great, and it includes that tiny label on the front cover, but it's embedded throughout this document, which investors read when they're looking to purchase our bonds. So one, the label helps. When an investor, on the day that we're selling our bonds, they have maybe dozens or more options to buy bonds that day. If they see EBMUD, A, we've got a great name, and B, that green bond label says, let me look into that a little more, and then they learn more about us. So there's just this little small benefit there that I think helps us market and may get us slightly better pricing eventually in a provable way. And then two, it's being a leader in this area. And I think sometimes that leadership requires us to continue to improve and match market standards and come up to those standards like we're recommending today with this new policy, and that we're going to continue to do as we work on preparing to issue bonds in the next couple of months. And the other reason and so by doing this in the way we're doing it, I think it'll be something that other issuers can use as a model, especially we're a fairly large agency with resources and the best external advisors. And so, this is something that other agencies could maybe reproduce. Once we've done it once, they can take the charge and go to the next step. So I think the more we can, after we issue the bonds, sort of sell that at conferences and talk about it in our world, in our debt world, where we talk to each other, that's another way we can help be a leader in this space.
Sam, this is great. And I noticed only 8% of the bonds, I guess muni bonds, were green bonds last year. Are we seeing the CalPERS of the world becoming more aggressive to make those kinds of investments? And are there certain segments of the market that are really going to help drive that number higher that will be financially better for us?
I'm going to look to Robbie, see if he's got a great answer on the retirement side. I think one issue is we issue tax-exempt bonds, and so the folks buying that are typically people paying income taxes. Okay. And so the CalPERS of the world they're never going to buy our bonds. Okay. They just don't want it. They're very, very unlikely to buy our bonds, I guess. I don't know about never. And so taxable bonds, there are issuers that for various reasons issue taxable bonds, and the market for those, we hear, although, we're not a big participant in this, but we hear there's a big international market for that because the tax-exempt nature of our bonds only works in the U.S. And so, but if you're issuing taxable bonds, there's no benefit to owning them in the U.S. versus other countries. So there is, for example, a big market in Europe for taxable green bonds. But compared to a tax-exempt bond, it would still be more costly for us to issue that way. So we have not yet pursued that very aggressively. But so yeah, the taxable market is one way that there might be ways for CalPERS or other big and institutional investors to buy bonds. Typically for us issuing tax-exempt green bonds, what we think and what we hear from our underwriters and advisors is that it's a lot of California folks that have money to invest, and they want to invest in projects that are good and benefit ratepayers, and also that the interest they earn by holding those bonds is tax exempt for them in the state and then nationally.
Thank you.
Yeah, hope that answers
Yes. To support.
Okay, just want to make sure.
I'll move the item.
All right, we have a motion by Director Coleman and seconded by Director Katz. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Carries unanimously. All right, thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Sam. So next, I have 3 reports under the General Manager's report. The first one is a coronavirus update. We are continuing to monitor the COVID numbers at the district and around the state. You heard from Eileen earlier that we haven't seen that subvariant of the Omicron in the East Bay yet, and hopefully it doesn't come here, but we'll continue to track that. The return to work, which began February 28th, that has been going well. And then also at this time, we're still requiring employees and the public to wear masks indoors. However, we will review and update this and other district guidelines based on the data, guidance from the federal government, as well as state and local health departments. And Dave Briggs is here to provide the update.
Okay, thank you, Clifford. Good afternoon, President Linney. Good afternoon, everyone. And we're going to go to slide 2 here, as soon as I do it right. There we go. Okay, so slide 2 is showing, as we have in the past, the positives in our counties here locally. It's obviously gone down a great deal, and below that is the positives we've recorded at the district. And as Clifford was just discussing in response to Director Coleman's question and Eileen's response, even though there is some of the data nationally does show an increase in the BA2 subvariant in the wastewater, and Eileen is reporting none here so far. What they are reporting nationally are very, very low levels. So it makes for a great headline, but they're nowhere near the kind of concentrations we had in wastewater a month and a half ago. So it remains to be seen. A lot of the opinions that have been expressed in the media from national infectious disease experts that I've read in the last few days, opinions vary, but they are generally optimistic that if we do see a surge from the subvariant, it won't be very severe. I saw a quote yesterday that one of them likened it to approaching influenza in terms of the danger of the virus. So hopefully that is what we will see. But I do see or do feel that many federal and state agencies involved with coronavirus management are taking a pause and wait and see approach right now as we kind of see how the next 2 weeks, which I think are kind of going to be really at the crossroads here. So we'll see how the next 2 weeks go. But as you can see in the lower graphic, we were up through last Friday. We had only recorded 4 positives among employees through last Friday. Unfortunately, we've recorded 4 since last Friday. So we're up to 8 right now, but compared to February and certainly January, we're certainly on the downslope. And so we are at 450 total with 34 positives among contractors to date. We did go a whole week without any positives, but as I just mentioned, we had 4 to start this week. So hopefully that is just a bump in the road and we'll get right back to a low number of positives. No operational impacts, reduced numbers of people who are off work because of COVID. So all those are trending in the right direction and no one is hospitalized presently with COVID. So as I mentioned, I think many are taking a wait-and-see approach right now. I think one exception to that is I believe the state probably, I think it was within the last 2 weeks, they did rewind the masking requirement for schools, and many school districts have now rescinded the mask wearing indoors, not Oakland Unified, but many have moved that direction. That's the one thing that's changed. We have relaxed our outdoor face covering requirement. We did that about a week ago. Indoor face coverings still required. We have made some small adjustments in work travel and gatherings just to try to take into account real-time conditions, the state of the virus. All other safety protocols remain in place, so very few changes other than that. And the vaccine requirement remains in effect. So from here, we're in our, I think we just started our 4th week of coming back to work. So far, so good. Things have gone very well. By and large, employees are very happy to see each other once again. I've had all sorts of reunions, but we'll continue to monitor things day to day as we always do and update protocols as we see fit. If things continue to go well over the next week or so, we could lift our indoor face covering requirement, but we're not ready to do that yet. We will continue to get our exempted employees, they will continue to test weekly. and we have reduced our testing sites that employees have access to three locations per week. That's what I have for you, but again, right now we're just kind of taking a wait and see. Thank you.
And, if we do lift the indoor requirement for face coverings, it could also apply for board meetings as well. Or there's a possibility, we can also look at the differences between a board meeting and just staff in the building, because the building is not open to the public right now. The public is allowed to attend the board meeting, so there is, we could consider, because of that additional exposure, to have requirements for people to wear masks in a board meeting. So I just want to, while we're in the boardroom, just because it's open to the public. But, what would likely happen, unless we hear a direction differently, is if we lift the requirements for indoor, we just lift it for all of our activities, including board meetings.
I don't have a response in general, but I do think that, or I don't have a response on the specifics, but I do think that we should be taking into account the setting, like stability of the cohort, or generally what are the community spread case rates. But certainly stability of the cohort and having access to the public does affect that. So I don't know what the recommendations of public health authorities would be, or our own industrial hygienists, but those are factors that I would think about.
Okay, moving on to the water supply update. So far, we haven't seen the miracle March that we've all been hoping for. There is a possibility of some rain, I think, Sunday and Monday, but I will tell you, it doesn't look like much of a rainmaker. Just looking ahead to April, we'll have a better idea of our CVP allocations and what water transfers might be available to us. Also, given the continuing dry conditions, the state may take additional actions after the April 1st snow survey, which is typically released around April 10th. So, it won't happen on April 1st. We will provide a drought update to the board at the first board meeting in April, and then at the second board meeting in April is when we bring our water supply availability and deficiency report. And so with that introduction, I'll pass it off to Dave to give the water supply update.
Okay, thank you again. All right, so we'll cover a few topics here, what we're doing with supplemental water, and a bit more numbers for you in terms of outlook and where we are right now. So first, just with respect to supplemental water operations, as the board knows, Freeport's been on since early October. We took a break more or less in the month of January as we experienced a very wet fall. We took a break to make sure we had room locally in storage to accommodate the supplemental water. But as the winter and the spring started to dry up, we turned Freeport back on again in early February, and we've been going flat out ever since. So we'll continue to pump for about 2 more weeks. We probably have, at this point, a little over 31,000 acre-feet diverted from that CVP supply through Freeport. And as Clifford mentioned, the calendar year, contract year 22 allocation is pending. Early communication from Reclamation was 25% of historical use. That was quickly followed up by another letter from Reclamation essentially backtracking as the hydrology has trended drier. And as Clifford mentioned, perhaps by April 10th, we'll get more clarity from Reclamation as to whether or not it'll be less than that. We are certainly, that was intimated from Reclamation that it would be lower. So we'll see what we get. Could be a lower percentage of historical use, or it could be based on health and safety factors. So looking at water production, you can see in the red line, which is this fiscal year, you see the steady climb as we've gotten into a dry winter and spring. And comparing this level of production to the calendar year of 2020, which could be a relevant baseline for state policy in the coming months, we are about 1% below on a calendar year comparison basis, comparing this calendar year to calendar year 2020. So we'll see how the rest of the spring goes. But yeah, we are seeing a significant response in the service area from the dry conditions. Okay, so the hydrology. January and February and March have been very, very dry. The number and bar that you're looking at for the month of March for the upcountry watershed, McCallum watershed, is actually closer to an inch, because we did pick up half of an inch over the weekend, but still pretty meager. All said, with considering how bad January, February, and March have been so far, we are at 83% of normal for the year because of how wet the fall was. So it is a bit astonishing to think that we're in that good a shape considering how dry it's been in the last few months. As Clifford mentioned, the 2-week forecast is not yielding too much, maybe an inch upcountry. So we are looking at finishing March at, depending on the timing of the storm and whether it comes before or after the 31st, we could be looking at a March of only a couple inches or so. And then locally, similar story. We picked up a few tenths over the weekend, but pretty meager here locally as well. And then I did want to share this chart with you just because it does give you a sense of really how unprecedented this hydrology has been. So what you're looking at is January through June. We are not including October through December, which were extraordinary in its own way. But just looking at January through June, you can see here all the lowest amount of precip in the McKelvey watershed we've ever recorded in order. And you can see 2022, and it's quite a leap to even get to second place. So now, granted, we're we're closer to 2, so that blue bar for 2022 should be at close to 2 inches at this point. We may have an inch in the forecast, but that may do it for the month of March. You can see that we need about 4 more inches, which seems like a lot to me, just to get to dry, which would still get us roughly half of what the next lowest year is, 2013. So really an unprecedented dry spring, and I'll get to how this is relevant to our forecasting with reservoir storage in a minute. But yeah, this really does put it in context. But keep in mind, we did have 150% of average coming into January, but that said, just really unbelievable how low the precip has been. Okay, the snowpack is about, which is shown in red there, is about 60%. We did get a few inches over the weekend, so it's up a little bit at this point. So it's 60% of average. Certainly not what we want it to be, but just for context, you can see what the blue line for 2015. It's been a lot lower before, but not certainly anywhere close to average.
Okay, quick question related to that. It dropped precipitously. It dropped a lot. Can't say the word right now.
The snow?
Last year, was spring moved forward, and I think we lost 75,000 acre-feet of water that was going to go into that didn't go in. There seems to be a decent ample snowpack up high still because it's been relatively cold. How might that differentiate if it remains along those lines compared to 2021 versus 2022?
Probably the best way to explain that is when I get to the forecast for runoff and reservoir storage. But yeah, certainly a heat wave will make that snowpack disappear real quick. This is showing the snowpack at 8,000 feet. There's not much snow at 4,000 anymore. I think most of that has probably melted at this point, or it's just a sprinkling. But yeah, but actually the snowpack at 8,000 feet is not half bad. Actually, it's 60% of. So it's 60% of good.
Let's see what it looks like after this week.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, they're going to get a foot of snow though next Monday.
Yeah, but it's going to be really warm before that.
I know that. All the rattlesnakes are out.
Okay, so overall, system storage has not moved much, 535,000 acre-feet. Again, the biggest gap is in Comanche storage, and we're rapidly filling local storage with a supplemental supply. And here's just a view of snowpack in the Sierra. As we mentioned last time, around the first of the year, it was looking incredible, 150% of average, and without many substantial storms to date. It's just continuing to drop, and is now approaching 50% of average, just about everywhere. We showed this chart before. This is a prediction, a model that's put out by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA. So, Director Coleman, this is a mixture of American-based models. It's not the European models, just so that's clear how this forecast is put together. It is showing in the light brown lower than average probability that we will see median precipitation for the next 3 months. So this prediction has gotten more and more pessimistic in the last few months or so. It was roughly equal chances during the first part of the year, and it's gotten a little drier as we've moved into the spring, which is really matching reality. So this isn't I don't think this is anything newsworthy. It's just sort of supporting what we're seeing on the ground. The storage up and down the state, again, well below rule curve, which is shown in that red bar. All these storage reservoirs are below flood control levels, well below flood control levels, except for Folsom. That's the one exception. So if you look at Shasta, Trinity, New Melones, that comprises the bulk of the CVP storage. So you can see the reclamation is worried that they've already maxed out on storage. They may, based on releases and snowpack, they may already have topped out in terms of storage, and so that's why they're considering backing off of their initial allocations. The state is down to 5% allocation. The State Water Project notified their contractors either last Friday or the Friday before that they were downgrading from 15 to 5%. Okay, so just looking at the forecasted hydrology in the watershed, we're closer to 32 inches now, but you can see how close the dry and as we're approaching the end of the water year, you can see how close these variable hydrologies are now. They're starting to converge now, not that big of a span. The drier forecast is getting close to the 50%, the median, because there's just not that many potential inches left in the water year as we roll into April. So we're more than likely going to end somewhere between very dry and average as we end the year. Okay, so, and then finally looking at forecasted storage. So this is kind of just addressing Director Coleman's comment and prior comments from the board. We have taken a very close look at the antecedent conditions, the very dry soil moisture, and incorporated many of these factors into our model to make sure that we have got the best chance of predicting an accurate forecast or runoff as we move through this dry spring and into the summer. And as a check to that, we went back and after we revised the model, we went back and looked at a very, very dry spring. In fact, it was the number 2 spring that I showed you on that bar chart a minute ago of 2013 when we got very, very little precipitation after January 1st. So we essentially calibrated our new model against that extremely dry spring, and it seemed to check out. So we feel reasonably confident that we've got the runoff predicted well, or certainly within 5,000 or 10,000 acre feet. So these numbers, I think we have some confidence in. That being said, what is shown there with all of these end of season storage figures, you can probably subtract 30,000 acre feet from each one of those, just because now we're factoring in the next 2 weeks, which we think is dry. So we're not, the next 2 weeks, if we factor that into our forecast, that's not tracking a 50 or a 90, that's more like 99. So if we factor that in, all those numbers here in black on the right-hand side, you can take about 30,000 acre feet from. So in other words, the median is closer to 500,000 now, and the 90%, which we haven't been tracking, we're more like halfway between 99 and 90, but the 90% forecast is probably 430,000 acre feet. So we're somewhere, if we keep tracking this, drier hydrology than that, we could be, 430,000 acre feet or even lower.
What would the 99 be, Dave?
The
I
99.
think we should start we need to start adding that line to the forecast.
Yeah, we haven't, that's just been the way it's been. Last spring, we tracked the 99, and we kept talking about the 90 and the 50, and we tracked the 99, and this year, I hate to say it, but it's doing the same thing. The 99 right now is 415,000 acre feet.
Minus
of carryover
30?
No, that I just wrote down before the meeting. The updated, with including the next 2 weeks, which are dry, 99% forecast is 415.
Yikes.
Check with Chris. Yeah. And, well, I was going to say the zero rain to come, but I won't comment on that unless asked. That's all I have for you.
Thank you, Dave.
I put on Facebook last night, everybody should wash their cars next month, once a week.
And,
Good reaction from that?
No, I don't think I had to be afraid people would do it.
Okay.
don't look too closely at my car. It hasn't been washed in so long that I'm starting to have that windshield look with the wipers.
Yeah, I used the thing that cleaned my windshield yesterday.
Okay, for the last item, we want to share with you a new online wastewater tour that staff developed. This is a story map Similar to what we did for the Reservoir treatment plant tour and the fossil tour, and we have Eileen White here who will kick this off.
Great. Good afternoon, President Linney and members of the board. You will recall when the in-person tours of the main wastewater treatment plant were suspended due to the pandemic, we quickly mobilized and created a live guided virtual tour. The live guided tour is conducted over Zoom and led by a member of the wastewater team. Over the past 2 years, the live guided tours have been highly successful, bringing in people from all over the world, tripling our yearly outreach, and winning a national award for public and education outreach. We're excited today that in honor of World Water Day today, we are launching EBMUD's newest educational resource, which is a website-based virtual tour titled From Your Tap to San Francisco Bay. This tour provides an overview of the main wastewater treatment plant and features a variety of engaging videos and an interactive map. This new tour, as Clifford mentioned, complements the district's existing waterside tour called From the Mountains to Your Tap. So now you can go from the mountains to your bay. I'd like to thank James Hank here, an associate civil engineer in the wastewater department, and Zoe Lake, wastewater control rep, for leading this effort, and all those that contributed from within the wastewater department, as well as graphics and public information. James Hank is now going to give you an overview of the new virtual tour.
All right, thank you, Eileen, for that introduction. So hello, Board of Directors and everyone listening in on Zoom. I'm now going to give an overview of our virtual tour, which is located on our EBMUD website. And the tour itself is a single web page, so you start at the very top and then you scroll down to the bottom. So as Eileen mentioned, the tour is called From Your Tap to the San Francisco Bay. And beneath we have a brief mission statement, which emphasizes our commitment to protecting public health and the San Francisco Bay. And of course, we have a photo of the main wastewater treatment plant with the city and the hills in the background. Here are our 5 headers. The 5 headers are welcome, treatment videos, interactive map, meet EBMUD staff, and resources. And if you click one of these headers, it can take you directly to that section, so it's very easy to navigate. In our welcome, we have a little bit more text which expands on our mission statement, providing some context about our history, that we began operating in 1951, talking about all the different types of marine life, migratory birds, endangered species that we're helping to protect, and then of course emphasizing that there are 7 million people in the Bay Area. So really providing a lot of context about the great work that we're doing here. And then beneath we have a map of our service area, and on the left is a text box which just defines the different cities and the number of people that live within the service area. And then from here, our next section is the treatment videos. We have 11 videos which are quite short, between 30 seconds and 1 minute. And it starts at the beginning of the wastewater treatment process and it takes you all the way to the very end. And so here we wanted something that was very accessible to a variety of audiences, but that was also very engaging. So I know that we have limited time, so I'll only show 2 of these videos, the first one and the second one. But before I play, I'll just call out that on the left side is the title of the video and a brief description of that particular process. So let's start first with the first video on preliminary treatment.
All the wastewater that is generated throughout the service area combines together at the influent pump station, where preliminary treatment is provided. The powerful influent pumps lift wastewater up approximately 30 feet so that the wastewater can flow throughout the rest of the treatment plant. Coarse and fine screens remove trash, debris, and things that shouldn't have been flushed in the first place.
All right, so yeah, what you saw there was our fine screens with some of our actual contaminants that were removed.
I can ask what that was.
You know, I'm not even sure. You take what you get sometimes. So yeah, that was a really good example of, it's brief, it's really targeted messaging, but again, it's really accessible to a variety of audiences, whether it's, person in high school or maybe even middle school or a member of the general public. So we really kept it at that level. And so, as I mentioned, this is like a scrolling tour. So you just keep scrolling down. And then here, the next video appears with primary treatment on the left and then the new video on the right. And so as I mentioned, there's 11 of these, which span the liquid treatment process and the solids treatment process. And then we talk about resource recovery and beneficial reuse, how we generate electricity, recycled water. We even highlight our lab. And then our final video that I promised I'd show is our discharge to the San Francisco Bay.
From start to finish, the total treatment process takes about 6 to 8 hours. The final step is to remove residual chlorine in order to protect marine life. So near the shoreline, we add one last chemical called sodium bisulfite. The treated wastewater then travels 1.2 miles out in the bay and is discharged at a depth of 50 feet. East Bay MUD is committed to its core mission of providing wastewater treatment to protect public health and the San Francisco Bay.
The next section is our interactive map. On the left are these kiosks that are actually from our in-person tour route. And so it's interactive because you're able to click to see the kiosk in more detail and you get to read it. And here, there's some redundant information to the videos that we just saw, but there's also some new information as well. And so these kiosks are a really great tool that we've been able to use throughout the virtual tour program over the last 2 years in our PowerPoint presentations. And we actually were able to beta test these for about 1 month before the coronavirus pandemic began. But so it's interactive because as you move throughout, as you scroll down from kiosk 1 to kiosk 2, it actually shows you where these kiosks are located at the treatment plant. So it's giving people who want a little bit more lay of the land that ability to see where we're located. Then the next section is Meet East Bay MUD staff, which has a 5-minute video. And whereas the treatment videos that we saw earlier have a pretty neutral and scientific tone, this video here is really bringing the human element, and it's showing the diversity of our employees and all the different types of jobs that we have.
That's you.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just one of 300 of the wastewater department. And this video is actually part of a new series of videos that are being developed as part of our new employee orientation. So it's going to be there for future generations of East Bay MUD employees.
Just like those airline videos.
Yes, exactly. And since this video is so special, I recommend watching the whole 5-minute video, if you guys would allow that.
Is it up for an Emmy?
Hopefully.
Since 1951, East Bay MUD has been a steward of the environment and has remained committed to our core mission of providing wastewater treatment to protect public health and San Francisco Bay.
Wastewater refers to used or dirty water that is flushed down the toilet or washed down the drain after you do things like bathing, laundry, and dishes.
That water being dirty, we can't just put it out into the bay because in the receiving waters it can harm animal life or people. So what we do is treat the water to make it safe for the environment, for the people, from the receiving waters.
The wastewater service area is an 88 square mile subset of the drinking water service area and is home to 740,000 people. After leaving homes and businesses, wastewater travels through a network of underground sewers to East Bay MUD's main wastewater treatment plant located in West Oakland. On an annual average basis, we receive approximately 60 million gallons per day of wastewater.
During storms, rain can enter the wastewater system through old cracked pipes, causing flows to increase significantly.
The wastewater department consists of about 300 people working at multiple locations. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
There are 4 divisions in the wastewater department. The treatment division operates and maintains the wastewater infrastructure on site.
The engineering division supports the planning, design, and construction of projects for the capital improvement program.
The Environmental Services Division manages a number of programs to protect water quality. They oversee the wastewater pretreatment program and pollution prevention program. And they continue to remind our customers to only flush the 3 Ps down the toilet: pee, poop, and paper.
The Laboratory Services Division ensures that all drinking water and wastewater samples meet their requirements. Even though we're located physically at the wastewater treatment plant, we also process drinking water samples. Each year, we process approximately 20,000 analyses for regulatory compliance, process control, and research investigations. Our lab is unique because we partner with smaller agencies as well as the East Bay Regional Parks District.
Wastewater treatment involves multiple steps to physically, biologically, and chemically remove contaminants and germs. The liquid treatment process progressively removes smaller and smaller contaminants through pumping, screening, gravitational settling, and biological treatment.
Biodegradable solids that are collected in the later stages of treatment are broken down by anaerobic microorganisms. This process generates 2 end products: nutrient-rich biosolids and energy-rich biogas.
The last steps of the treatment process are disinfection and dechlorination. Disinfection with chlorine bleach removes germs like viruses and bacteria. Dechlorination is then necessary to remove that chlorine in order to protect marine life. The treated wastewater is then discharged out to the bay 1.2 miles at a depth of 50 feet. This is the last spot where we sample the treated wastewater in order to make sure that it meets all of its regulatory requirements.
East Bay MUD incorporates the principles of sustainability and resiliency into every aspect of the wastewater treatment process. The term beneficial reuse describes turning what would be considered waste into something valuable, and we do it in 3 different ways: biosolids, electricity, and recycled water.
We take our biosolids and turn it into fertilizer. We take our biogas and turn it into electricity and provide enough electricity to operate the plant.
Some of our wastewater undergoes additional treatment to become recycled water, which is used for non-potable purposes such as landscape irrigation and cooling towers. The Resource Recovery Program is what makes us truly unique. Through this program, a variety of food waste from all over the region are transported by truck to the main wastewater treatment plant, where they help boost the production of biogas and electricity.
When I started working at East Bay MUD, it was really exciting to see women working at the wastewater treatment plant. Working as an operator, I didn't always have the chance to have female mentors, and so working at East Bay MUD, it's really great to have women who are operators and in leadership positions.
Teamwork is critical to everything we do here in the wastewater department. We have employees with a variety of skill sets and backgrounds who are each able to contribute meaningfully.
Wastewater has evolved significantly over the past 70 years and continues to rapidly change. Today, we manage many competing priorities as we face complex challenges such as aging infrastructure, emerging regulations, climate change, population growth, and a changing workforce. We are planning for a sustainable and resilient future while remaining committed to our core mission of protecting public health and the San Francisco Bay.
That's excellent.
Yeah, we're really excited to finally be able to unveil this for everyone. And so then the last section of the tour is just our resources, where we have a number of links for people to either sign up for our live guided virtual tours or eventually in-person tours, and then some other partner websites. And then we finish with this beautiful photo of the main wastewater treatment plant and then the bay in the background. So at the beginning of the tour, we start with showing the plant from the opposite angle, seeing the city in the back. But here we wanted something to really symbolize what we're doing here. As we treat the wastewater, we return it to nature, and we complete the water cycle. So I encourage everyone to take this virtual tour soon and to make sure to spread the word. And thank you very much, and happy World Water Day.
Thank you, James.
One question.
Nice job of narration.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was, I mean, the whole thing is superb, and the pee poop and paper, I'm sure you lot will get that into the script.
And I just want to say, James, it was a team effort, PIO and everyone helped, but James led the effort. He spearheaded this. He's not your typical engineer. Let's just put it that way. I think Kelly would agree. She's been trying to hire him in PIO, but I said hands off. So I just want to say, I do want to give special thanks to James because he really drove this to completion. So thank you, James.
Careful, James.
I do have a question. So I went onto since I've had problems with this before with many of our wonderful materials, I went into the search East Bay Mud, I typed in, the title of the story map, no matches match your query. I went to Google and it came up not under East Bay Mud, but under ArcGIS. So I'm just wondering, how do we navigate to this and I didn't see it on the title page of the wastewater part of the website. So how do we get to it?
Yeah, so
On the
currently, currently all of the story maps are on our educational resources page. So here I can show you.
So yeah, if you go on our main page and you see About Us, you click on About Us, and then scroll down a little bit and it says Educational Resources, and then all the story maps are in there.
So just.
But I hear you. We do need to.
It's not where it belongs.
Yeah, let's push it out.
It's not where it belongs.
Yeah, we do need to fix the search engine, and we are looking at the structure of the website.
I mean, things should go with their subjects. I mean, maybe they should be under educational resources too, but, all of these story maps, people are trying to find out about their water, they're gonna look under water, they're not gonna look under educational resources, right? They're gonna try to, or whatever. So I just,
And the search engine, because again,
Yeah, the search
I had
engine
somebody
maybe
said
is-
they spent 10 minutes on the website, they couldn't find something. I said, and I Googled it, and it showed me right away. And I just realized we need to maybe just tell people if you're looking for something, Google it.
even a topic on the minutes, I mean, it's, that's how, yeah.
Yeah, I think you definitely want to make it as
complaint about
easy.
you guys.
Yeah,
You guys
not
did
to rain
great.
on your
Oh,
parade.
amazing.
We
Yeah.
hear you and we will follow up.
Yeah.
We definitely hear you. And I do the same thing. I have to go to Google to find things.
Yeah.
Right, well, it's something we want to publicize, it shouldn't be hidden, right? It's like, what are we doing to push this, push it out?
Yeah.
It can be in multiple places on our site if it belongs in educational resources and on the wastewater general information site and on the main page in a rotating basis. This is probably one of the highest quality materials that I recall us ever preparing and producing. Congratulations on accomplishing that. And I look forward to pushing this out to audiences that I am able to communicate with. I have another suggestion on the guided tour. I know that breaking it up into modules is a great way to have self-direction and to take a break and to come back to things. It's also an opportunity in an educational setting to be able to allow the instructor to extemporaneously add more technical science in between. And I think it would be great to, as we develop more educational materials for K through 12 and a master plan that I understand is underway, being able to help with some of those curricular materials for presentations that might supplement that or go in between, I think would be an excellent way to support our K through 12 educational programs as a separate project. But this is really fantastic. Thinking that a classroom instructor might actually just use this and lecture in the middle. But I see so many ways that this stands on its own to educate the general public in a way that we haven't used before.
And I know we've shared with you, and Kelly has talked to you about our long-term plan for education, K through 12.
And we think that that's excellent feedback. And we are hoping to go back to in-person tours. We did give an in-person tour to one of the, you recall a couple of years ago, we won a grant to take West Oakland school kids to the plant. And now that we're coming out of the pandemic, we were actually able to do that. It was very successful. And then we've also got some UC Berkeley grad students that will be taken through the plant. So we're hoping as the economy, things open up, we'll be able to also, but I hear what you said with regard to having additional material. But I think that was kind of the point, to make this, that you could do little portions of the treatment process and then pause and then insert, so we can make that available.
Well, what's exciting about this is it doesn't smell.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's just really accessible to people at the click of a button.
But smell-o-vision is coming next, just so you know. We're gonna
That's James' next chapter.
Scratch and sniff screens.
Yeah. And the last thing that I would just add is the online tour is also available under the wastewater website here. So we did a rebrand for this page, and we've now made it really clear that we have these 3 different options. So the online virtual tour, which you just saw, then the live guided virtual tour, and then ultimately the in-person tours. And we've also modified, you know, every month whenever we send out emails to the customers to advertise the live guided tour, we send them, you know, a link where they can sign up on Zoom. So we've added new language there as well to promote the online tour. So this morning I sent out 30,000 emails. So we're going to be doing that on a continuous basis.
That's great.
Yeah, just to get a plug in for what you do that helps so many of our ratepayers. Your superior operations in the resource recovery area, adding back big dollars, and your environmental stewardship. Those are outstanding.
Yeah, I agree that those are definitely things that we want to highlight that really make us distinct.
Okay, well, thank you again, James, Eileen, Kelly, and the entire team for putting this together. This is fantastic.
Yeah, thank you.
Lastly, I just want to mention that the Speakers Bureau and Outreach record table for the remainder of fiscal year 22, I know it says calendar year, but it's fiscal year 22, is at your places, and we can answer any questions you may have.
I have one person for public comment.
All right.
I have a hand for public comment online.
On this particular subject, or?
I have to find out.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's go ahead.
Kelly A., you should be able to unmute your mic. And
yeah, I'm speaking on agenda item number 10. It's called General Manager's Report. I believe that there are 3 items buried in there. One of them was wastewater.
Yes.
Right.
Which item are you? Excuse me,
I'm going to
Kelly
be doing water
A.
supply updates.
The water supply update? Okay. Your 3 minutes will start now.
Yeah, thank you. So I think that we're being a little bit complacent here on this board, and probably all happening at water districts throughout the state, where everyone is sitting here and telling ourselves we can just sit here quietly, wait for the official update of at the end of the water year in April or June or whenever you feel like it, and then we can start making plans for what our other suppliers are going to be doing to the customers as far as allocations for the CBP project or state allocations, state water project, whatever. And we can just sit here and just wait for that to happen, and then pretend like all of a sudden we have a new information about a drought, a mega drought that's happening all over the western U.S. But it's not really new information. Everyone can see clearly based on what your staff has just told you what is happening. It's quite clear the writing is on the wall. And what do we see going on with your customers? Well, buried in those slides was a 1% reduction in water use compared with the state baseline year, and the state is telling people to get, if they want 15%. I'm not saying that that is probably a number that needs to be that the district needs to be making some serious efforts to try to reach that number or pretend to reach the number. And if not, if the number is not being reached, then there will be problems later, I'm sure. 1% is a lot worse than 15%. I remember a few months ago, it was more like 8%, and this district was actually looking pretty good, but I think everybody is falling off on the conservation department And then also on this idea of we're going to go out and measure the snowpack, and then, well, what happened a couple of years ago, just a year or two ago, was that when they measured the snowpack, they thought they were like 50%, but then the expected amount didn't show up in the runoff. The runoff disappeared, so it was like 20% runoff out of a 50% snowpack. So the correlation between snowpacks and runoff has has gone askew, has now gone off kilter by climate change. So that's basically what my message to this district is, that complacency, which is being promulgated here, needs to stop. And what the district has in its control, besides acquiring more supplies, is figuring out how to achieve conservation levels that the state is going to be mandating, the 15% or whatever it is. Thank you.
So, maybe Doug, just 1 minute, just to talk about our water supply report, and just to remind everyone in the audience, as Dave shared, we did adjust our models to take into account the fact of the lessons learned that, we get less runoff if we have drier antecedent conditions. And we have been planning for different scenarios, and we have updated the board and gotten guidance from the board over the last year, quite frankly. And as far as the savings go, we were tracking up through the end of December over 10% since July in conservation. But as we all know, when things go dry, the customers have started to turn on the irrigation. We reported here less than 1% from January through March to date. But of course, as we know the typical patterns, people will start conserving again, but they've turned on their irrigation systems. We will track that, and we have plans for, and as we share with the board, outreach to our customers to continue to save water and conserve given the dry conditions. So the board heard today the changes. We're not relying on our old models. We have new models that we've updated to take into account what we've learned from the past.
Great, thank you, Clifford. Do we have any other, we finished with the general manager's report?
We are, and there are no other hands for public comment.
All right, well then we will now move to reports and director comments. Beginning with committee reports, the board met this morning for the long-term water supply workshop number 2, during which staff responded to questions from the February 22nd, 2022 workshop, and continued presenting information on desalination, the Los Vaqueros Reservoir expansion project, groundwater, and the Bay Area Regional Reliability Partnership. We'll now receive a report from this morning's Finance and Administration Committee, and the Los Vaqueros Reservoir JPA and the Freeport Regional Water Authority meetings. Director Patterson, you want to talk about the finance?
We received the quarterly payroll disbursement and real estate summary reports, and the water and wastewater systems for the quarter ended December 31st, 2021. A monthly transactions report was received and recommended, which you've already passed. The revisions to district policies, 2 were recommended and have been acted on by the board. And finally, the update of the guidance for issuing green bonds. And you heard that report and adopted it in the meeting.
All right, thank you. Director Coleman.
Great, thank you. At the Los Vaqueros meeting, which was held on March 9th, we took 2 actions. We adopted a resolution on policy statement on commitment to diversity and accessibility. And second, we also adopted a resolution on the decorum for board members and the public during the meetings. And tangent to that, I have a finance committee meeting for Los Vaqueros on March 31st.
Great.
And then you have FRWA, Director Coleman.
Oh, me? Okay. I thought Bill would do that. Okay. Freeport meeting was March 10th. We had all in participation, and really the bulk of the meeting was about the unfortunate passing of Forrest Williams and finding his replacement. Again, he did a phenomenal job, and Carrie Schmitz is going to be the new program manager in that role.
All right. All right, thank you for that. Other items for future consideration, please forward those to the general manager. We're now at director comments. Do we have any director comments, Frank?
And if Risha, you'll cue it up real quick.
Yes, Robin is going to bring that up for you.
Robin's going to cue it up.
Oh, we can have singing by you, Frank?
Yes.
Follow the bouncing ball.
I went, yesterday, City of San Leandro celebrated their 150th anniversary.
Channel 5 News last night.
Well, and Pauline Cutter had a significantly difficult time pronouncing melon, let alone East Bay mud. She came up with East Bay. I don't even know what she said for my name initially, but then she came up with I was East Bay Regional Parks, and then she went, oh my goodness, no. So the pictures you have here is the big banner they have in front of City Hall, and also the how they had it all laid out, and that little column that you see there, that little blue column, that was the what do you call it? The capsule, the time capsule.
Wow.
And what you can't see across the top is that the lid was all bolted down tight. And I have another picture that shows the odds and ends, which was relatively unspectacular.
Next slide.
But oh, there we go. There's a picture of the that table there. That's the kind of stuff they had inside it. And the whole plaza at...
So another 100 years from now, they'll open up and be disappointed, just like
Yeah,
every time they open up time capsules.
This is what went in, or this is what came out?
That's the stuff that they stashed in there.
Stick it in there.
Well, they said on the news last night that there's a newspaper article, I guess President Nixon visited a park 50 years ago, and there's a newspaper article.
Yeah, they had an old Daily Review newspaper. For those that remember, there was a Daily Review. And good turnout, as well as an astonishing array of politicians running for this, that, and everything else. Whether it was county supervisor or a Loma board or city council, and apparently San Leandro has a mayor's race that's going to be fairly exciting. But I just thought you'd like to see what they did, and then I gave to Kelly the fancy water bottles that they gave out, little shorts with the ribbon on it, the banner on it.
Why didn't you give them our water bottles to give? Frank, come on, man.
Because the last time I suggested us putting water in bottles,
no,
I almost got laughed out of this room.
We have our metal ones.
Well, I'm not going to tell them the metal ones. Those things cost money, man. Anyway, I thought you'd all like to see what they did. It was a very nice turnout. Oh, and the eats were, what is that cupcake company? So they had cupcakes and cake, and that was it.
All right.
So
You got water out of your water bottle, though.
yeah, well, apparently I won't go into what the water came from, but anyway. So I just thought you'd like to see what they did as a party.
Thanks for representing
and thank
us
you,
there,
Risha
Frank.
and Robin.
You're welcome.
All right. Any other director comments? All right, then. We are at the end of our meeting. Our next regular meeting of the board will be held on Tuesday, April 12th, 2022 at 1:15 p.m. This meeting is now adjourned.